Welcome back to another edition of the Fight HQ podcast. Of course, I'm Jason Floyd, as always, joined by the fighter Pete Rogers Jr. We're here to talk UFC 317. Goes down on Saturday. We've got two title fights on the line. We have got a fighter who is priced at $9,900 on this card. When I was putting my sheet together, he is a massive 30-1 betting favorite. Absolutely nuts of what we're seeing here. Pete, how's it going, man?
What's up, Jason Floyd? Jason the man. Pretty interesting card. Crazy lines. I mean, I don't understand. I mean, it's such a unique sport where you have massive favorites compared to other sports, right? Like, you look at baseball, not too often you're going to find plus 300, plus 400 underdogs all that often. And when it comes to MMA, I mean, we got crazy favorites, crazy underdogs. When you convert the odds into probabilities, it is quite insane what some of the probabilities are for their projected odds. So it's like, 85% of the time isn't even all that bad when we have a minus 3,000 or whatever the hell you said favorite is crazy for Jacoby Smith.
Yeah, it's absolutely nuts. He's 9,900. Just to kind of think about the wide range here. While he's 9,900, the next most expensive fighter is 9,300. That's being Ilia Topuria. I was looking at some of the prop bets on Ilia Topuria. I mean, even if you want to take Ilia via TKO KO, that number is minus 160. I mean, it's crazy. And we come off last week where we had Oban Elliott, who was approaching a 5-1 betting favorite. He goes out there and loses. Both female fights, the underdogs who were, the favorites in the matchups were nearly 3-1 betting favorites. The underdogs go in and cash there. And it's just, we have seen that happen so much in the UFC in 2025, where you look at some of these betting underdogs. I mean, think about this. Payton Talbott was a 11-1 betting favorite in his last matchup. Of course, goes out there and we see a fatal flaw in his game and not being able to stop the takedowns. And now he's a plus 165 betting underdog. I mean, there is the line that to me really stuck out to me. The Brandon Royval, Joshua Viviane line. When I did my sheet this morning, Brandon Royval is plus 100.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, he's constantly disrespected. And then like to touch on other things that you talked about, like, the Payton Talbot line, and then he drops the ball, and everybody wants to say fraud check nowadays, but it just goes to show, I think, the low level quality that some of these cards are, where fighters are getting ballooned to massive favorite lines, when at the end of the day it's a fist fight, Jason Floyd. You know what I mean? Like, it's a fist fight, and MMA is very volatile because there's so many ways to win and lose, and so many paths to victory, and you have to be on your A game. And then we also have a ton of short notice opportunities, more so in the past, since the COVID era, like post COVID than ever before, of fighters just taking opportunities last minute, and whether they're prepared or not, everybody's just willing to jump at the opportunity instead of, take the Yuri Prochazka approach and be very patient and wait for the signing. It doesn't happen far too often.
It's a rarity in this sport where a fighter says, hey, I'm not ready. I'm not ready for the UFC quite yet. I mean, it's just, you mentioned about Yuri, a guy who been in the UFC several years before than he was. He said, no, I want to develop my skills. And sometimes we see fighters who get to the UFC, maybe they don't get the correct matchups. They go back to the regional scene, and then they come back to the UFC and they perform much better. And the most recent case of that is Joose's Law, of what he's been able to do. I mean, it's just like, when I was like just looking at the DraftKings lines and thinking about game theory here, the 7,000 range, this may be one of the better 7,000 ranges we've had in a while.
Yeah, I don't mind some of these 7,000 fighters, to be honest, and I don't want to spoil some of my picks, but it's really hard for me not to click on some of these names because I think the value is tremendous. I love flyweights to begin with. Never mind flyweight underdogs in a 5-round main event. You know what I mean? Like, just as from a points total, because it's the most active weight class out there. And I do think that, don't I always say prioritize main event, co-main event underdogs? women's MMA underdogs and flyweight and heavyweight MMA underdogs. So it's like, I can definitely see a path where the co-main event, you got Kai Kara France at 7,200. Even Charles Oliveira in the main event, for crying out loud, 6,900. I mean, that's ridiculous. And, the 7,000 range from Beneil Dariush, the dark horse within a lightweight division, has fallen from grace. You have everybody's favorite prospect, Payton Talbott, now everybody's least favorite prospect, and it's just such a fickle game. And then, you have Hyder Amil, who everybody's very impressed with, Viacheslav Borshev. I do agree that I think the 7,000 range is pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, I look at it this week, and the McKinney Borshev fight, it's a boom bust fight, but it's going to be a fight that you're going to probably need to prioritize when we're talking about large field GPPs. It's just the likelihood of how that fight is going to play out. I think it's very tough to avoid the co-main event in terms of that one, because if Pantoja goes with a heavy grappling style, he could rack up just a ton of points. He may be the guy that could be the slate breaker just because of the amount of takedowns he gets, control times he gets there. But of course, also we know at Car France, hey, if he can keep the fight on the feet, what can you do there? Main event, I think, also is very tough to get away from when we're talking about large field GPPs. It's just how you expect that fight to go. Royval and Josh Van, I mean, you would probably be way more interested in it if it was a 5-round fight. But being at 3 rounds, I mean, I think that's a tough fight to avoid. I do want to kind of see where the Payton Talbott ownership is when we get to Friday night and Saturday morning. Could that, are people really down on that aspect? Beneil Dariush, all he does, he's either going to go out there and get a finish or he's getting finished. I mean, that's a fight that you kind of looked at. You mentioned about Hyder or Amil in that one. I mean, now I'll say this, I don't want to touch the Viviane Araujo Tracy Cortez fight, just because that's got look, they're both decision fighters. You don't want to get there in terms of when we think about price point. I don't know how I get to a 9,900 Jacoby Smith. I really don't know how I get there. I mean, that to me is you've probably got either Charles Oliveira or Kai Kara France in your lineup. The Denise Haynes fight, Haynes making his UFC debut. Is he able to get the fight to the ground? And then let's just be honest about it. Our opening fight of the night is a Dana White Contender Series fight.
Yeah, it's for me. I know the price tag's insane for Jacoby Smith, but outside of he definitely has quick win bonus potential. Don't really think it's going to happen though. But if you look at his Dana White Contender Series fight where he landed a ridiculous amount of takedowns, I mean, he can literally ragdoll anybody within that division. And Nico Price is a vet. Yes, Nico Price is chinny and has taken a ton of damage throughout his career, and his best wins are fluky. But from takedown upside, if I'm looking at my chart here, Jacoby Smith is really high, and so is Terrance McKinney. So, there's definitely a path to pay off that price tag, but golly, I'd love to see the ownership on it, and I can't wait to see to see if people are willing to shell out that 9,900. I would imagine that most people aren't, but I'm probably going to take a little more aggressive approach with that, even if I have to roster some ugly underdogs.
Yeah, I mean, you got to imagine. I mean, Cortez is probably going to be in a leverage spot there. Maybe Felipe Lima is going to be in a leverage spot. Maybe the DFS base is not going to be down on Payton Talbott, but I'll see you there. Of course, we will have a DraftKings contest on later on this week. Of course, Pete's got his Patreon page. That link to that Patreon page is in the description of this show. Of course, also the link to our Discord channel is in there. On Saturday, I'll put in what I am betting. In terms of this card, I've already started kind of looking at some props and maybe where to find some angles in terms of that one. And of course, if you got any questions on the fight, leave those in the chat. We'll get to those questions throughout the show. Let's get right into breaking down the main event. You got the vacant lightweight title on the line once these guys step into the cage on Saturday night. Ilia Topuria taking on Charles Oliveira. Ilia Topuria is a 5-1 betting favorite in this one, plus 350 for DeBronx, the former champion. Oliveira 6,900 on DK, 9,300 there for Ilia Topuria. Charles Oliveira will walk in this matchup with a 5-inch reach advantage. One of the things that in Oliveira 2-2 in his last 4 fights, I think there's a legitimate conversation of whether he really deserves to be in this fight over Justin Gaethje. But one of the things that I did a deep dive on when I was doing my research for this card, Pete, was the takedown defense of Ilia Topuria. So when you go on UFCstats.com, the first thing you see, 92%. The last time an opponent went for a takedown against Ilia Topuria, Pete, we got to go 4 fights ago. That was Bryce Mitchell, who was 1 for 9. And if you want to be a Charles Oliveira backer in this one, your thought process has got to be somehow, some way, Charles Oliveira gets on the back of Ilia Topuria.
Yeah, it's a very interesting matchup, and one that I'm extremely excited about, because you have one of the most fan favorite fighters in Charles Oliveira up against the hottest prospect in the sport, I can honestly say, and I don't even know if prospect is the correct term, but the hottest fighter in MMA who could go down with some legendary status in Ilia Topuria. I mean, the guy is unbelievably skilled in all departments. His striking is fantastic. His head movement is really, really good as well. His understanding of the fight game and his distance and working to a strategy and shot selection is admirable. I can really say, like, it looks very, very similar to some prime fighters that have gone down as the greats in the sport. And Ilia Topuria does have a very well-rounded game. He's an excellent grappler. He's an excellent wrestler. It's just he hasn't really been able to showcase it, or had to. Like, he can grapple, he can wrestle really well. If you ever watch him flow, at open workouts with his brother or his training partners, I mean, the kid is so damn talented in all areas. Obviously, you're playing with fire with Charles Oliveira on the ground, because Oliveira is okay being on his back, throwing up submission attempts, looking to isolate one of your arms, set up a triangle choke. But most notably is Charles Oliveira is looking to backpack you and get on your back. That's the most dangerous threat to Ilia Topuria, in my opinion. Is getting his back taken, because back takes can happen even when it's not a clean takedown. It could just happen by a body lock and working towards one side and forcing your opponent to go to the other side. And if your opponent doesn't have a whizzer, you can shuck them past and work towards taking the back, using the cage to kind of peel your opponent the way you want. I do really, really find the odds interesting that when the time I made my sheet, Ilia Topuria was minus 470 with Oliveira at plus 360, 9,300 for Topuria, 6,900 for Oliveira. I mean, we've seen Charles Oliveira's highlight reel. It's one of the most fantastic highlight reels out there. He's such a finisher. On the feet, he's threatening and dangerous too offensively. His striking's good. His hands are good. His knees up the middle are very, very sneaky. And he could be looking to time Ilia Topuria, because we have seen Topuria take a head kick against Jai Herbert. We have seen him look, to look a little bit vulnerable at times if you go all the way back at the Yusuf Zalal fight. But, I mean, ever since then, we've seen nothing but, like, championship caliber from Ilia Topuria with the hands, the head to the body to the head combinations. The way that he rips to the body and then goes back upstairs is the best in the sport. It is the best in the sport, and I honestly can see him hurting Charles Oliveira, who may be too aggressive, because I think that we have seen Charles Oliveira's forwardness and aggressiveness worked against him in the past. He's been cracked and hurt by numerous fighters, and from the likes of Gaethje, Chandler, Dustin Poirier, and then you can go back to like Charles Oliveira 1.0 when he was wilting under pressure and taking shots and taking damage poorly, and he's turned into an absolute menace within the division. So the value is unbelievable with Charles Oliveira at plus 360, and I don't blame anybody for going that route. He does have 8 inches in the height plus reach department. He is the true 155er who has established himself over the years, whereas Ilia Topuria is looking to move up. So you're probably never going to get the value on Charles Oliveira like this ever again. I think the only other time was, if you go and you look back at the big underdog status is against Islam Makhachev. But for me, Jason, for my money and for my pick, I'm going to go Ilia Topuria. I think that he does crack and hurt Charles Oliveira, and I do think that he ends up knocking him out. And honestly, I wouldn't put it past him to land a submission as well. I just don't think it's wise. I don't think it's wise to go that route. He has to avoid getting his back taken and backpacked. Obviously, Oliveira is a fun bet. You can make a lot of money by betting on him this weekend, and he has the offense to pull it off against anybody in the world. It's just defensively, if you look at his striking defense, his striking defense sits at 49%, and his takedown defense sits at 56%. Takedown defense is because he's willing to go to his back and welcome you into his guard. He's not afraid of being on his back and looking for a submission. So that number is a little skewed, but the striking defense shows that, Oliveira is very, very hittable, and you do not want to be hittable when you're going up against Ilia Topuria. So give me Ilia Topuria via KO in round 2, price at 9,300. I think it's going to be a hell of a fight, though. Charles Oliveira is a dog.
Yeah, I mean, I like Ilia Topuria in this one. I think he gets the job done by TKO, KO, and I would be relatively surprised if this fight hits round 4 or round 5. I think it's done within 15 minutes. I don't even know if it hits the 3rd round, because, look, we have seen Charles get cracked early on in fights. The submission prop for Oliveira is also very interesting, plus 650. You kind of wonder, could, Topuria maybe catch him, and then somehow Oliveira is able to survive and make this kind of what we saw with Michael Chandler. But to me, yeah, Topuria has got to be the pick here. But the money line at minus 500, don't want to touch that. Got to go prop game hunting with him. Co-main event is also a title matchup. The flyweight title will be on the line as Alexandre Pantoja will defend his title against Kai Kara France. Pantoja priced at 9,000 on DraftKings. Kara France is at 7,200. The betting line, Pantoja minus 250. Plus 200 for Kara France. When you look at Pantoja in his last 4 fights, which have all been title fights, he has had 26 takedowns in 51 attempts. He has had 11 plus a takedown attempts in 3 of those 4 fights. One of the notes I wrote down here, Pete, and I'll get your thoughts on it, is if it's grappling heavy, do you trust the gas tank of Kara France, especially when we talk about this match coming off of going 5 rounds this one. And, Pantoja, I just look at because of that grappling, he has got slate-breaking potential here, Pete.
Yeah, he definitely does have slate-breaking potential. I think that Alexandre Pantoja is, clearly one of the best flyweights to ever exist. And he's an excellent DFS play. Just going over his previous scores: Asakura 103, Urseg 143 in a 5-round decision, Royval 142, 5-round decision, Moreno 143 in a 5-round decision. This guy, if he goes the distance, he's accumulating a ton of takedowns and control time. 6 takedowns, 8 minutes of control time. 8 takedowns, 15 minutes of control time. 9 takedowns, 8 minutes of control time. So it's very hard to get away from Alexandre Pantoja, and I think that's he sticks to you like Velcro, and that's why he's been so dominant within this division, because he's, I think, probably big enough to be at 135, but he's found his home at 125 pounds where he can really manhandle people, back take people better than anybody within the division. And his volume and aggressiveness and kind of overwhelming tendencies is what makes him successful in a lot of these matchups. And, when you look at this one, you have him going up against Kai Kara France. This is a rematch. And granted, they fought on The Ultimate Fighter, so technically it's an exhibition. But these guys did square off and have a very competitive fight. But, it was one that was 9 years ago. Kai Kara France has improved. So has Alexandre Pantoja. Pantoja is in Coconut Creek, Florida, the mecca of true jiu-jitsu, and American Top Team has literally the best jiu-jitsu in the United States because of everybody coming from Brazil. So I think that Alexandre Pantoja's levels of training partners are incredibly high. My worry, though, is the lack of damage to influence judges, right? Like, let's say this is a 25-minute fight, and you have Alexandre Pantoja looking sloppy on the feet, being aggressive, but you have Kai Kara France landing volume with more power to it. Um, and let's say they're not awarding much to, getting behind Kai Kara France, not necessarily back taking him, but kind of having him against the cage, having his back, sort of, just having a lock around the body and just kind of, just holding on to him and just like killing time and killing the clock. I don't know if they're going to award Alexandre Pantoja some of those rounds, but Pantoja has a knack for taking the back, and Kai Kara France has an Achilles heel of giving up his back. If you look, he's had his back taken in numerous fights. Granted, he's never had to deal with a guy of Alexandre Pantoja on his back for 25 minutes. We have seen Kai Kara France get submitted 3 times. Once against Brandon Royval via guillotine. That was back in 2020. And then we can go back even further, and we can look that this is early on in his career. Rear naked choke in 2014 by Mark Striegel, and Bravo choke in 2014 by Gustavo Falcaroli. So there's something to be said that nobody in the UFC besides Brandon Royval has been able to submit Kai Kara France, but I don't know, man. It's very hard to make me pick against Alexandre Pantoja, but I do think the line is it's getting a little wide because flyweights, they're so damn competitive, and the value on Kai Kara France is really speaking to me, Jason. I'm almost like willing to stack this fight, 9,000, 7,200. Granted, if it's one-way traffic, a stack doesn't help. But if it's competitive and there's reversals and it's more on the feet and it's just like, half the round one fighter wins, half the round the other fighter wins, we could see a stack work. And a week like this, I really do think that it's possible, and I'm going to entertain the idea. I'll tell you what my model likes, Jason. My model really does like the volume of Kai Kara France, the striking volume of Kai Kara France, and also the takedown defense of Kai Kara France has improved significantly over the years. It sits at 88%, Jason. So, like, obviously, you're going to have Alexandre Pantoja attempting like 8 takedowns this fight, but how many is he really going to get against Kai Kara's improved takedown defense? So I think I'm going to lean with the value for a DFS play. I think I'm going to go Kai Kara France for DFS, but I know that I could look completely foolish here, and I know you're going to be on the other side, but give me Kai Kara France to kind of spoil and shake up this division a little bit, because I'm hearing Pantoja already talking about matchups beyond Kai Kara France. He's talking about Merab Dvalishvili, he's talking about Joshua Van, and not to say he's overlooking Kai Kara France, but our thinking when it comes to rematches. We tend to like the fighter that lost the first one in the rematch. So I think people could be sleeping on Kai Kara France, especially at this number. It's a numbers play for me, so give me Kai Kara France.
Yeah, when we're talking about this from a DraftKings perspective, what Pantoja in the grappling, just because of what that fantasy score upside could be with him. But you make a lot of great points about Kai Kara France. Look, if you're looking to make a underdog play, don't mind the price tag on DK. Don't mind the price tag when we're talking about the betting lines here. But overall, I do feel that Pantoja is going to be a core play for me just because of what that fantasy score upside could be. You mentioned about Brandon Royval and Joshua Van. That's the next matchup. Brandon Royval priced at 8,200, Van 8,000. Royval is a plus 100 betting underdog, minus 120. For Joshua Van, of course, this is a matchup that came together recently here in the last 2 weeks, I guess it's been, when Miguel Kopp pulled out of this matchup against Brandon Royval. Kopp pulling out due to an injury. They were supposed to, Royval and Miguel were supposed to fight back in March. That fight didn't happen because Brandon pulled out of the fight due to an injury. Royval's gone the distance in his last 3 fights. He's won back-to-back fights, both of them being via split decision. And, look, this is a massive step up in competition for Joshua Van. When you look at who he's fought to this point, Bruno Silva, Ray Teixeira, Cody Durden, Edgar Chavez, Charles Johnson. Royval does have a 3-inch reach advantage, and we got a 9-year age difference between these two guys, Pete.
Yeah, I mean, interesting fight. I think if it was a 25-minute fight, I would possibly feel different. And I'm kind of feeling the way the model in the algorithm is liking certain fighters in their volume this week. I mean, like, I'm not even looking at like competitive projections necessarily. Like, there's a gap, whereas other fights, and when it's low level, like last week was horrific in all areas. What was it, 6-6? It was just a terrible, terrible week for me and everybody. But like I'm seeing the volume and effectiveness of Joshua Van in this fight from a data perspective, and it's surprising to me. It's very surprising to me. So I have this fight as one of the highest paced fights on the card. Obviously, you have flyweights in 15-minute atmosphere, so they're going to go at each other like crazy. Don't have to worry about fatiguing. If you look at strikes attempted, and I'm really going to weigh in and put value into fighters that are more active and attempting more strikes and attempting more takedowns, because they could be inefficient, but they can be busy. And sometimes being busy is a little bit better than being effective. I'm going to look here and see that 15 strikes attempted per minute for Joshua Van, whereas Brandon Royval is sitting at 11. And when I watch Brandon Royval fights, I'm like, he throws a lot. So to my surprise, Joshua Van throws even more, and he's going up against a fighter in Brandon Royval who's honestly hittable. Like, I remember him getting hurt and rocked in numerous fights and always being live and snapping back into the fight relatively quickly. But Brandon Royval's striking defense sits at 47%, which is not the greatest. Anything under 50% I would consider as poor. 59% striking defense for Joshua Van. Definitely could lead to more strikes landed for Joshua Van. 9 years younger on a historic run of what he's done since he's been in the UFC. Absolutely crazy. And I think the reason that we're seeing a projection favor Joshua Van is the takedown defense from Joshua Van. 81% takedown defense rating. You'll have Brandon Royval mixing in a takedown, having very, very slick jiu-jitsu. I actually think that he could win more fights if he went in there and wrestled a little bit or grappled or kind of combined it instead of just, being in love with his knee up the middle and pitter-patter striking and opportunistic guillotines and other submissions. Like, go out there and impose your will and dog walk your opponents. Joshua Van's going up against a guy in Brandon Royval who has a poor takedown defense sitting at 45%. Joshua Van ain't shooting takedowns, but he could. He has the skills. He does have the background. I think that he's very well rounded. He's getting an opportunity of a lifetime. Do I like the fact that he's been cutting weight numerous times throughout the past 2 years and just coming off a very fresh performance over Bruno Silva? He's young enough to pull it off. I don't know the ins and outs of how much he's cutting. If it's a terrible cut for him, if it's a terrible cut, obviously I don't like that. But if it's manageable and he's young and he's lean and he seems to stay in shape year round, dude, go out there, be active. I think being active makes you so damn dangerous in this game. You level up after every single fight. Brandon Royval should have been fighting Manel Kape, but that didn't come to fruition. So he's now, on paper, taking a step down in Joshua Van, but it's a very dangerous fight. Van can win this fight. He really can. So you're going to need Brandon Royval to go out there and look to keep it on the outside, use his 7-inch in height plus reach advantage, throw the knees up the middle because Van is going to be low. He's going to be dipping. He's going to be moving his head. Make him run into a knee as he has done in the past. Was that the Mateus Nicolau fight, I think? Pressure him. Maybe make Van clinch you. Maybe it opens for a guillotine. But if you just let Van get comfortable, man, he just snowballs with volume. And then next thing you know, he's digging your body and he's hurting you. And then he's going back upstairs. So I've seen Brandon Royval with opportunities, and I understand it's a step up in competition, Jason. I've seen him have opportunities, and he has not captured the opportunities with both hands. Like this on paper should be an easy fight. The 5-round fight against Topuria, I liked Royval in that fight. That was a split decision. The 5-round fight against Brandon Moreno, who I don't think has looked the same in quite some time. That was a split decision. Lost a unanimous 5-round decision over Alexandre Pantoja. And then you start to think, Jason, right? Like I had worry about Rose Namajunas having so many 5-round fights going in that 3-round fight atmosphere with Miranda Maverick. It's a pace change. It's such a pace change that like fighters sometimes they don't get going early enough, and next thing you know, the fight's over. And Jason, maybe you can remember who else, because we talked about it, where it's like that fighter was like a slow starter, historic slow starter, and then never really came to. And next thing you know, the fight was over, and it was just like, oh, what the heck?
Are you thinking Chito
Vera?
Yeah,
so yes, well, definitely that's definitely one of them. But I think there was one sooner than that. But I just worry about that. 5 rounds to 3 rounds to 5 rounds to 3 rounds. Like, this is a hell of a fight, and honestly, with the card quality we've been having, it could honestly headline some shows. Van Royval, and I've been talking a while, but I'm just excited. This is a card that's actually good in my opinion. This is a big test for Joshua Van. But he hasn't, outside the Charles Johnson fight where he got uppercutted and knocked out, he's looked pretty damn unstoppable. And this could be a learning experience, and it could be a vet lesson from Brandon Royval. But if you're giving me one of these guys as a slight underdog, I might take it. So I'm going to take Joshua Van slightly, but I understand why other people would be on the opposite side.
Yeah, it's a massive opportunity for Joshua Van, where you go out there and you get a win. Now you're a top 5 guy in this division, and you very well could make the case that maybe he is right there in line to get the next title shot in this division. Next up, we've got a lightweight matchup between Beneil Dariush and Renato Moicano. Moicano 8,400 on DraftKings. He's a -120 betting favorite. Dariush 7,800. He is at even money as we head in this one. It has been a little bit of time since we've seen Beneil Dariush. His last fight was back on December 2nd, 2023. That was a loss against Arman Tsarukyan. He has back-to-back losses for Dariush, and they both came via first-round stoppage. And the last 3 wins for Dariush have come via decision. You look at Moicano, this will be his first fight since taking that short-notice fight against Islam Makhachev, of course, losing in the first round. And 11 of Moicano's last 13 fights have ended via finish, Pete.
Yeah, this fight is very difficult for me to pick, man. And I think everybody kind of struggles with this matchup because, like, I don't remember when the last time you mentioned it. I didn't hear you clear the last time these guys were supposed to fight, and it's like the odds have changed significantly. I believe Renato Moicano was like a -160 favorite, and now he's sitting at a -120 favorite over Beneil Dariush. So it could largely be due to the recency bias of Renato Moicano taking that title fight opportunity against Islam Makhachev and completely flopping and getting dominated and dismantled. But guys, it's Islam Makhachev. You know what I mean? Like, yes, he does that to everybody. Islam Makhachev is a special talent. And, taking a title fight on short notice is a big damn deal. So I think there's still a lot of question marks surrounding Beneil Dariush, and I'm not completely out of the Renato Moicano business just because he lost to Islam Makhachev. I understand Beneil Dariush lost to Arman Tsarukyan and Charles Oliveira, but like I've been looking at Dariush and watching some of his fights, and I know that he's very talented in the wrestling and jiu-jitsu realm. I know that he's a southpaw with a big left hand, very talented. And has some power for this division. I don't know, Jason. I almost feel like, and I could be dead wrong or I could be early, I almost feel like the sport might have, passed Beneil Dariush up just a tiny bit. Or, not passed him up, but maybe Renato Moicano is just levels above Beneil Dariush right now, especially from the momentum standpoint. Like, I know he just lost to Islam Makhachev, but prior to that, when Renato Moicano implemented his ground and pound against Benoit Saint Denis, that's one of the worst beatings I've seen in quite some time. And Benoit Saint Denis, you can say, yeah, he's a fraud. He got fraud checked by Dustin Poirier and blah, 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 blah. I don't care about none of that. That guy's dangerous. He's good. And, it just proved that there are some developments to Renato Moicano's game where he's not just a jiu-jitsu practitioner. He's willing to throw hands hard on the feet. He's outboxed several talented strikers in the past, Calvin Kattar being one of them. He has very good wrestling, and I almost think underrated wrestling. He can take your back, and now when he takes you down, he's not stalling. He's not burning the clock. He's sitting there and he's elbowing you and slicing you up and advancing and slicing through that guard and implementing some ground and pound. Like, I like him a lot from top position. It's just, can he get Beneil Dariush down? I mean, we've seen Beneil Dariush get knocked down or hurt in numerous fights. Alexandre Hernandez. We've seen Charles Oliveira hurt him. We've seen Arman Tsarukyan hurt him. I know there's more. We've seen Beneil Dariush, the Drakkar Klose one. He was on wobbly legs. I worry about the durability of Beneil Dariush. But on the flip side, like, we've seen Renato Moicano get sat down numerous times too. I mean, he was on his way to getting his ass kicked from Jalen Turner. Then Turner gassed from beating him up. And then he comes around and turns around and turns the tide of the fight. He's super tough, very live. He does have somewhat of a tendency of getting dropped. I mean, he was dropped to the body by Jose Aldo. He was dropped by Jalen Turner. He was knocked out by Rafael Fiziev. This is a really hard matchup, Jason. But who have I been impressed with more recently? I think it's Renato Moicano. But the issue is he able to get Beneil Dariush down? Because if Beneil's on top of him, I don't like that for Moicano, obviously. If this is a kickboxing matchup, I'm intrigued. I really am intrigued. I think I just have a ton of faith in the American top team guys so much because I've seen it firsthand that I'm willing to back Renato Moicano at a very close fight, in a very close, competitive, tough fight. It could be a grimy, gritty fight, one where it goes back and forth. But he cannot afford to lose. Give me Renato Moicano. I'm going to go 8,400 here as a minus 120 favorite.
Yeah, I feel like this is a coin flip fight for me. I just think it's super close.
So close.
I mean, I think I'm with you. I lean Moicano in this one, but it's not a confident pick at all in terms of this one. Then our opening fight of the pay-per-view is going to be Payton Talbott taking on Felipe Lima. Lima priced at $8,700 on DraftKings, a minus 195 betting favorite. Talbott, he's priced at $7,500 on DK as a plus 165 betting underdog. This, of course, is the first fight for Payton Talbott since losing to Hany Barcelos back in January, where he was a 11-1 betting favorite in that one. And of course, the storyline with that one was what Barcelos was able to do with the takedowns, 8 for 15 in takedown attempts in that matchup. On the flip side, Lima 2-0 in the UFC, coming off a decision win against Miles Johnson. In the Miles Johnson matchup, Pete, he was 2 for 5 in takedown attempts.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, man, this is a very interesting matchup because I just don't know if we're getting out of the Talbott business a little too early. Like, we can't become fickle. We cannot be hating on people because they have learned on the job or they've suffered one defeat. I mean, Payton Talbott showed to be one of the best prospects in the sport by dismantling Cameron Simon, by showcasing excellent striking. I mean, like the striking and combinations this kid throws and just how diverse he is on the feet is what separates him. Hany Barcelos is a vet, and he gave him a true vet lesson by attempting a ton of takedowns. And Talbott was unable to defend him. And, didn't get started early enough, wasn't able to capitalize and put Hany Barcelos away. So he lost the fight. And yes, he got absolutely dominated while he was one of the biggest favorites in quite some time. Now, 6 months later or whatever it is, like, is he the same guy? Don't you think he's going to be working on his grappling? Don't you think he's going to be working on his wrestling? I mean, he should have been wrestling and grappling all along. But I would imagine he would look to refine the hole that caused his defeat. And this is why this is a head scratcher fight for me, and one where it's very, very, very competitive. And I don't know if we can really be out of the Talbott business. But they do have him paired up against Felipe Lima, who is an absolute monster. Lima is very, very talented and can take down, can look to take you down, can strike on the feet pretty well. Very powerful, very strong strength of schedule with victories over Miles Johns, Muhammad Naimov, Jonas McGar. Like, you can go back and you can look. Like, he's fought some talented guys, and he's a true prospect. Whereas if you look at Payton Talbott, it's like this kid is good, but Giannis Gamori, round 1 KO. The performance looked good. The strength of schedule, no. Nick Aguirre, rear naked choke, same thing. Cameron Simon was his best one. The Contender Series one was great. Like, I just worry that people are a little too, like, biased towards what happened recently.
Mhm.
A little too much recency bias for the Payton Talbott line. I think this is a close fight, but Felipe Lima is good at taking the back. He can look at that footage in Howdy Barcelo's fight and say, I can implement a very similar game plan. I can strike hard. I can clinch. I can look to take the back. I can look to submit Payton Talbott because, yes, Talbot could improve upon his previous performance against Howdy Barcelos, but to what degree? To what degree? How big is the hole? How deep is the hole? Like that, he has to patch, because if his wrestling is as poor as it was evidenced in the Howdy Barcelos fight, it's going to be a couple years. It's going to be a couple years, Jason. It really is. And guess who's ready and ready to compete in all areas of mixed martial arts fight? It's Felipe Lima. So I think the line's a little off. I think there is some value on Payton Talbot, but I would probably line Felipe Lima at like minus 150. When I did the sheet, he's like minus 192. So I just think it's a little off. I think it's the rightful favorite, but Lima should be able to put together a very good game plan, because 6 months, it really is not enough time to completely flip a hole in your skill set. So I think Lima's ready now, and that's basically all there is to it.
For me, I like the value here in Payton Talbot. I mean, clearly the concern that it's what we saw back in January, that he gets taken down Felipe Lima, because you have to imagine that's got to be a big part of their game plan heading into this one. Is hey, we saw Barcelos put the everything out there for us. Can we implement the same thing? But to me, it's about the value, especially when you talk about DraftKings at 7,500. And I mentioned earlier in the show, there's a lot of fighters in the 77,000 range that I do like. Now our feature prelim matchup will be at 185 pounds. That's Jack Hermansson taking on Gregory Rodrigues. Rodrigues priced at 8,800 on DK, minus 220 betting favorite. Jack Hermansson priced at 7,400. He is a plus 180 betting underdog. Jack Hermansson has been out for some time now. The last time we saw him was back in February of 2024, which was that win against Joe Pyfer. And this is only his third fight since the end of 2022. Rodrigues, his last fight was back in February, which was that 4th round TKO loss against Jared Cannonier. And Pete, my question with this one is, can Hermansson survive a potential, flurry of punches from Rodrigues, maybe an early storm, and could he potentially grapple his way to a victory?
Yeah, I'm very interested with this fight. I mean, Jack Hermansson's so damn underappreciated for what he's done in the sport. Like, he's a very talented fighter, point fighter on the feet, likes to stick and move, good jab, good low kicks. But it's his grappling, it's his submissions that really created his whole career. His ground and pound, some of his finishes are legendary with how vicious they are. So he's like a shark. When he smells blood, man, he goes after you. But he has rounded out and become a little bit more patient. This is a dangerous fight, and this is a real dangerous fight. I think that RoboCop Rodrigues is the better striker, better kickboxing, very, very big power for the division. Definitely more power than Jack Hermansson. And people forget how damn good Gregory Rodrigues is in the grappling department. Like, I don't think people understand. This guy is very, very good and skilled there. Do I think that he would completely obliterate Jack Hermansson? No, because Hermansson's skilled in him, himself. So it's like it's not like he's going up against a white belt. Rodrigues is good. He's powerful. He can back take you. I think this is an interesting spot for Gregory Robocop Rodrigues to learn from overexerting himself in previous matchups, going for the kill and not getting it, and not being able to finish everybody. Letting the finish come to him instead of pushing the issue too much, because that's what happened in the Jared Cannonier fight. You go back and you watch. I mean, he hit Jared Cannonier with some missiles and would have had almost anybody else out of there, and pushed the issue and tried to finish the fight so much that he was gassed. He was gassed. But in a 15-minute environment here against Jack Hermansson, I like him quite a bit, Jason. I do like him quite a bit, and I can understand why people like the value of Jack Hermansson a little bit, sticking and moving, throwing a little bit more volume. But I actually am willing to back Gregory Rodrigues here. I think that the power and the significant strikes and the damage criteria, I think everything's going to tilt in his direction, and I think the grappling is going to be negated. So give me Gregory Robocop Rodrigues here. I don't hate him. I don't think this fight really produces quality DFS scores.
Could be a situation where Rodrigues ends up being a leverage play because people just don't want to get to the 800 price tag. I mean, Jack Hermansson, to me, if you're rostering him, I think you got to be thinking about him being able to grapple. But I just have concerns of him not being able to weather a flurry coming from Gregory Rodrigues, especially early on in this matchup. Next up, you got Hyder Amil taking on Jose Miguel Delgado. Delgado priced at 8,500. He's a minus 170 betting favorite. Hyder Amil 7,700 DK. He's a plus 140 betting underdog. Amil 3-0 in the UFC, coming off a split decision win back in March against William Gomez. Delgado won his UFC debut back in February, a first-round TKO win against Connor Matthews, and he is a product out of the MMA lab beat.
Yeah, I think everybody and their brother is excited about Delgado. Man, very, very violent fighter. Showcased excellent talent and excellent skills in all areas on the Contender Series. Coming off a big debut. The pace of this guy is ridiculous. Like, his individual pace is the highest on the slate, which goes to say a lot when you got Jacoby Smith attempting 13 takedowns per 15 minutes, and you got flyweights galore on this card. Like, for Delgado to have the highest pace, granted it's a small sample size, it means a lot. And 6.5 strikes landed per 15 minutes with 46% accuracy translates to 14 strikes per minute. Hyder Amil will match or come close to that with 12 strikes attempted. You do have Delgado with 8 years younger and 5 inches in the height plus reach department. So I like that for him. I also like the fact that, Delgado comes from a very, very strong camp. Can look to mix in takedowns as evidenced in the Contender Series fight. Does have some submission skills to him. Hyder Amil, man, I mean, he's been an underdog his entire career. And for whatever reason, I mean, like, you could pick apart some of his wins. Let's do it right now. You can pick apart some of his wins and like, say you're not that impressed, but he is 11-0. He does possess crazy pace. He did win a split, arguable decision over William Gomez. He destroyed Young Lee. He beat Fernie Garcia, but Fernie Garcia stepped up on short notice and did have limited success. I just think, man, Delgado has a full training camp. The guy is very talented and dangerous. I think fire is going to meet fire in the middle, and we're going to have to see who's got more dog in them. I mean, Hyder Amil, I mean, he's been an underdog, and he's been absolutely cashing. So if you've made money on Hyder Amil, I would love to know if you guys are continuing to ride the hot hand, or if you're hopping off the hype train and going towards Delgado because you think Delgado has a higher ceiling. In this particular matchup, I do think the length and the height and the youth and the aggressiveness and the well-rounded skill set of Delgado and the physicality, I feel like he might just have a little bit of an edge everywhere over Hyder Amil. So I will be picking Jose Delgado. I do think that this could be fight of the night if it goes 15 minutes, but man, these guys are going to have to showcase a ton of toughness because I just think it's going to be a violent fight.
Yeah, I don't know how much I'll get to it from a DFS perspective, just because I haven't built any lineups yet. But Hyder Amil has been a guy that I've been a backer of. I like the fighting style that he brings, and the guy is definitely going to fight for your dollar in terms of that one. But look, it is definitely, we always talk about there's certain gyms we really don't like to bet against. And the MMA Lab is one of those gyms for me, a gym that I really don't like to bet against. Next up, we have got a female matchup. Viviane Araujo taking on Tracy Cortez. Cortez priced at 8,900 at minus 260. Betting favorite. Araujo price is 7,300, and she's a plus 210 betting underdog. Viviane Araujo, you look at kind of a potentially bad stat for her, the fact that she's 38 years old. How many, especially when we talk about female MMA, how many 38-year-olds do you want to back there? She's gone the distance in her last 11 fights. Cortez, this is her first fight in 11 months. That was that matchup against Rose Namajunas. And Pete, all of her UFC fights have gone the distance.
Yeah, this one's interesting, right? Because I think the odds are a little heavy in the Cortez direction, right? Like minus 250 for Cortez, sitting at 8,900, whereas Araujo sitting at plus 205, priced at 7,300. And like we did just see Tracy Cortez kind of stumble a little bit against Rose Namajunas. Granted, it was 5 rounds. And a big step up in competition against Rose Namajunas. But you do have Viviane Araujo coming off, a victory over Karine Silva, which I didn't think that was going to happen. I was pretty big on Karine Silva to be a force within the division. She lost to Natalia Silva, but she also beat Jennifer Maia. But prior to that, lost decisions to Amina Hibas and Alexa Grasso. I just don't know what I'm going to get from Viviane Araujo. I know that she has good boxing. I know that she has some wrestling to her. I know she has some submission skills, but I just look at her and I just like, from fight to fight, I remember I backed her numerous times. I'm like, for whatever reason, I just feel like when she's in a winnable matchup that she gets a little gun shy at times. If you look at the strikes attempted, they're pretty similar. 7.9 attempted per minute for Cortez, 8.5 for Araujo. So actually a little more for Araujo. And it's the takedowns, whereas you do have Tracy Cortez attempting a little bit more, 4.6 takedowns per 15 minutes, whereas Araujo is 4.32. So a little bit more activity from Tracy Cortez. Cortez does have a pretty damn good win that has aged well over Jasmine Jesuda Vicious back in 2023. A lot of sprawl and brawl in that. Good hands showcased. I think Cortez is good, man. But I just don't – it's hard because women's MMA, they start approaching like minus 300 favorites, and it's just like, all right, well, I don't know. I think they're very competitive matchups, just like flyweights. 7 years younger for Tracy Cortez. Similar skill set. Both boxers. Both, enjoy to incorporate wrestling. I am going to back the younger fighter in Tracy Cortez, but I do not love it for DFS. I do not love it for betting. I would avoid this fight completely. If I had to play a side for DFS, I'd probably get to more Araujo, Jason, just because at 7,300, I can see her getting a decision. I could see it being a competitive fight where you're like, am I happy I have a minus 300 fighter selected, or am I happy I have a plus 205 underdog? And, I think that if you're holding a ticket, you'd be much happier having that underdog ticket for Araujo. So probably get some more Araujo for DFS is considered, but straight up I'm picking Tracy Cortez to win the fight.
Yeah, I think Tracy Cortez goes out and wins the fight as well. You look at the decision prop, Cortez win via decision, minus 200. Rougeau to win via decision plus 350. I don't like. Look, if you just wanted to take like a quarter, whatever your price point is, you want to take a quarter unit. I wouldn't mind going Rougeau, but yeah, I do think Cortez gets a job done here. And like you, just a fight I don't like for DFS. I just don't like the fantasy score upside, especially when you talk about Cortez at 8,900. I would think that the only reason you play Cortez would just be a straight up. You're in a large field GPP. You've got a ton of lineups, and you're looking at just as a leverage play in terms of there. Next up, well, we'll just go. This is a GPP fight of the night. I mean, it's boom bust written all over it. McKinney and Borishev. Borishev, the underdog here, he's priced at 7,600, a plus 150 betting underdog. McKinney, 8,600 on DK. He's a minus 180 betting favorite. Look, to me, the two questions I have, I mean, we all know what Terrance McKinney is. We have been on this roller coaster. We know the result of this roller coaster. Either he's going to win the first round or he's going to lose in the first round. Likely not going to hit minute 8 of minute 7 of this matchup. And my question is can Borishev extend this fight out? Of course, we know his stand-up abilities, but and then also I do kind of wonder, could Terrance McKinney bring out his wrestling shoes in this one?
Yeah, so okay, I'm glad that you asked those questions. So when I'm looking at Terrance McKinney, obviously he's a very volatile and untrustworthy fighter, but like he has so many skills. And it's just like, all right, well, is it going to click? Like, is it going to click? Are you going to put it all together because you are talented in wrestling? Your hands are great. It's just like he goes out hot out of the gate, unable to maintain the same pace, has a cardio collapse, gasses himself out, and has a little bit of quit in him once he starts to get fatigued. The thing is that he's been fighting some pretty talented competition, if I must say, and it's not like he's fighting soft competition. I think this fight is so winnable, Jason, and I know it's volatile, and I know people are considering this a 50-50, and people are worried about it, and they don't know which side to pick. Is it bad that I feel really confident Terrance McKinney destroys Borishev? And this is a point because Borishev has been training at Team Alpha Male forever, right? And that camp is surrounded by wrestlers with overhands. And that camp is surrounded with very, very, very good wrestling and takedowns. So it surprises me that Borishev has not developed his game to defend takedowns. And this is a perfect example of him being a part of a camp that should patch his hole over the course of the years. And they have been unable to do so. So going back to the Payton Talbott fight, in 5 or 6 months, can Payton Talbott improve his wrestling more than Borishev has looked to improve his wrestling in his entire career? You know what I mean? Talbott could go out there and improve his wrestling completely because he's young and he's adaptable. I think Borishev, he's clearly a kickboxer, which we know. He has that extensive striking background. But for whatever reason, things just don't click in that department. I mean, he got cracked and knocked down and hurt from Chase Hooper because he was worried about the takedown. And the threat of the takedown makes everything else open up. Like, McKinney could just knock out Borishev because Borishev is worried about the takedown. So he's not committing to any strikes or combinations or anything. So you have McKinney, using that takedown to make Borishev bite on something, throwing something up top. He's talented enough to kickbox with Borishev as long as he's not tired. And I think that he can take him down and honestly melt him. So I think that McKinney rolls here, Jason. I think that he rolls here. I am not out of Terrance McKinney. I think that he's young enough to fix some things. I think that he's got so much raw potential in the sport. Whereas like Borishev, his striking's good, but overall MMA game, I'm just not all that impressed. I expect more from the team that he's at to patch up his weaknesses, and it just has not happened. So give me Terrance McKinney as a priority play. And I could look stupid. I could be dead wrong. But I think that, when you're going up against somebody that has 43% takedown defense and you're going to attempt 9 per 15 minutes, I like that. I like that a lot. I mean, look what McKinney has done to better fighters. Look what he's done to Faraziem. I think that we could see him go out there and rear naked choke Viacheslav Borshev in round 1, identical to how he did to Faraziem back in 2022, back how he did to Eric Gonzalez in 2022. Yeah, I mean, I think that he can win in multiple areas. So that's my pick. I don't know if you disagree or agree, but I like McKinney way too much for 8,600.
I would say I like McKinney in this spot, but I mean, look, you obviously you understand the volatility that potentially is going to be there, but yeah, Borshev is a guy that you painted the picture perfectly. You would just think that a guy that's been the striking coach for Team Alpha Male, just being around the people in the room that he's around on a day in, day out basis, that he would get a little bit better there. But we'll see what happens in terms of that one. Next up, we've got our biggest betting favorite on the card, Jacoby Smith taking on Nico Price. Smith price at 9,900 DK. When I did my sheet this morning, he was a minus 3,000 favorite. It's kind of come down to 2,500. In my sportsbook now has him as at minus 16 to 1. Nico Price at 6,300 plus 1,000 betting underdog in terms of this one. He is when we call about Nico Price coming off that decision loss in October against Themba Gorimbo, 1-3 in his last 4. Of course, Smith won his UFC debut back in January in the first round, a product of that Oklahoma State wrestling room, and ton of first round finishes on his career. This just screams to me. This is the up-and-coming guy taking on that vet, and I think the up-and-coming guy gets the job done, but the price tag is what's just going to be how do you develop a lineup with it?
Yeah, I agree. I would say that if Jacoby Smith goes out there and has a sparring match with Nico Price can survive and steal it and win it, similar to how he beat Alex Morono via decision, similar to how to beat Alex Oliveira via decision. But it has not been good for Nico Price. I mean, this is a guy that has made a career out of weird finishes, unconventional, fluky type of finishes. And time again, he's won from an up kick off of his back, from a hammer fist off of his back. It's like I don't think that Nico Price should have been around as long as he has been around, truthfully. And the recent form is a good indicator. He lost a decision to Themba Gorimbo, lost via submission to Pat Sabatini in a grappling bout, got knocked out in 39 seconds by Robbie Lawler, got knocked out against Phil Rowe in round 3, lost the decision to Michel Pereira, got a doctor stoppage loss to Vicente Luque. I mean, this guy has been finished. He got finished by ground and pound against Jeff Neal, got knocked out against Abdul Razak Al Hassan, Darce choked against Vicente Luque. I mean, the back half of this guy's career has been sad. He's taken a ton of damage. He does have 6 inches in the height plus reach department, but Jacoby Smith is 7 years younger, and Jacoby Smith possesses power. He's green, a little too green to be facing a vet of this caliber, but the vet is washed, and the vet is in a very poor place within his career. It's very sad. And you have the takedowns attempted for Jacoby Smith per 15 minutes sits at 13. He possesses power. He can ragdoll Nico. He could knock him out. Just has to try to avoid something fluky happening to him. That always seems to happen in Nico Price fights. But 9,900, I know it sounds insane, Jason, but I don't see many people on the card with the same type of ceiling. Terrance McKinney's got some insane ceiling. Topuria, but yeah, he's one of one in that 9,000 tier with 100 plus all day long. I'm going to try my best to find salary. And you already know that I'm going to be playing Kai Kara France at 7,200. I know people are going to be playing Charles Oliveira at 6,900. We already like $7,000 dollar options. So I know it's hefty, but I'm going to do it because I think the kid goes out there and crushes. So give me Jacoby Smith here at 9,900.
Yeah, I think he's going to roll in this matchup, but it's just going to be of how do I develop that lineup with him in it. But yeah, I think he's absolutely going to roll here. Then we got heavyweight matchup: Denise taking on Hines. Denise 9,100 on DK, minus 350 betting favorite. Alvin Hines is 7,100. He's a plus 270 betting underdog. Denise coming off a second round loss against Marcin Tybura. That was a first loss in his MMA career. Denise, when you look at Hines, UFC debut for him, went 5-0 in LFA. 6 of his 7 wins have come via stoppage. We all know about Denise being the former kickboxer, Pete, and I think really the question is Hines going to be able to take the fight to the ground?
Yeah, I mean, it didn't look good when Denise was on the ground, right? Like, it looked pretty damn terrible. And that's where he fought a true veteran. But he has fought wrestlers in the past, and he did fight Carl Williams. And Carl Williams had a clear path to taking him down and taking him to Takedown City. And he did not do that. This guy Hines looks to dig to the body, go upstairs with big shots, has thrown head kicks before. If he chooses to stand and trade with Jonathan Denise, I think that he's in for a rude awakening. He needs to mix in takedowns, or at least use the threat of the takedown to set up a ton of things, set up a ton of options, set up his overhand, set up everything offensively. My feelings on this, Jason. I think that heavyweight MMA is the most volatile next to women's MMA. So, like, I don't mind low-level heavyweight underdog calls. I don't mind, getting more exposure to Alvin Hines. But I do think that Jonathan Denise has shown that he's pretty damn good. And he was one of everybody's favorite heavyweights on the rise. And I remember I chose him. I chose against him. I chose Marcin Tybura to beat him when everybody was on Jonathan Denise. So, obviously that was a good win for me. But it's just knowing when to hop off the train. And I think it's time to hop back on the Jonathan Denise train, because minus 325 for what he looked like against Austin Lane, Carl Williams, and Eduardo Neves, I'm okay with it. I don't like his ground game, but he does show an act for a knack for getting back to his feet, getting to his knees, scrambling to the cage. His jiu-jitsu is terrible. But yeah, I'm going to go with Jonathan Denise to win via either a late finish or a decision. I think it's going to be a very measured approach, but Jonathan Denise, at 9,100 is not a bad play.
Yeah, I'm always scared to roster low-level UFC heavyweight action.
Yeah,
Especially with, not knowing what is Alvin going to look like in the UFC in comparison to what we've seen on the regional scene. Then our opening fight of the night is a matchup that just came together at the beginning of the week. Jackson McVeigh, who already had a price tag on because he was supposed to take on Cedric Dumas, priced at 8,300, taking on Christian Edward here, who is making his UFC debut. Christopher was scheduled to fight on Dana White's Contender Series in August. 5 of his 7 wins have come via first round stoppage. And Misha about McVeigh, his also will be his UFC debut. He is an LFA product where he went 4-0 in that promotion, Pete.
Yeah, I like seeing the LFA part of his resume. I have to tell you, Jason, I mean, when I was looking, I'm like, all right, well, who the hell are these guys? And I tried to find data on them, and I didn't find anything. So I was looking at some footage from both of them, and McVeigh looks to be the more well-rounded fighter. Southpaw has some like Muay Thai tendencies, it seems to be, where he likes to throw kicks to the body. He throws knees, has a weird lead hand that he likes to throw. He is pretty tall, 6'4", 77-inch reach. On his record as a professional, 3 wins via KO, TKO, 3 wins via submission. If you look at his amateur background, the only defeat that he had was to Wes Schultz, who was a former Dana White Contender Series fighter that we saw go up against. The kid just fought. Who did he just fight? He went up against Mansour Abdul Malik. Wes Schultz is a very talented grappler. We've seen we've seen Jackson McVeigh on the regional scene, even as an amateur, find submissions, tons of triangle chokes, rear naked chokes, guillotines, Bravo chokes. So I like what I'm seeing from that. The aggressive opponent in Christopher Ewart, throws some sloppy combinations on the feet, and not a fighter that I am like. I don't have a ton of reads on him or a ton of footage, but the ones that I did see was against some very low level competition. I mean, he fought a guy who's 0-10, followed up by a guy that's 4-5, another guy who's 11-9. So when I see that going up against a fighter in McVeigh who's fought for LFA, and granted, LFA can have some low level opponents as well, I'm going to be leaning towards McVeigh, especially when I see that McVeigh has a ground game to him. So, yeah, give me McVeigh in a very low-level Dana White Contender Series fight that does not belong on this card. And honestly, it's a pathetic addition. But, yeah, give me McVeigh here. You're muted.
Probably helps you if I unmute my mic. But to me, I think if McVeigh was not on this fight card, that this fight's probably not happening here, but he was already on this one, taking on Dumas. And of course, Dumas has got his legal issues. Let's get into our straight up fight picks before we get into listener questions. Main event, I will go Ilia Topuria.
Yeah, I'm going to go Ilia Topuria.
Pantoja.
Straight up fight picks. Oh, God. Yeah, I'll go with Kai Kara France. I'll be a little ballsy here.
Give me right now. He's an underdog. Brandon Royval.
Give me Joshua Van here.
I'll go Moicano. I'll go underdog number 2 and Payton Talbott.
Okay, I'm a little opposite than you. I'm going to go Felipe Lima.
Rodrigues. I'm gonna ride the Hyder Amil train.
Okay, I'm gonna go still with Delgado.
I'll go Cortez. McKinney. Then I will go with Smith.
Yeah, Jacoby Smith.
Denise.
Renato Denise.
And McVeigh.
Yeah, I'll go McVeigh as well.
When we talk about some questions here, get some Discord. Tristan, best leverage play. I think you're probably looking at. I mean, I don't like it as a DFS play, but Cortez will probably have very low ownership.
Yep.
I mean, I imagine Royval and Van are going to have high ownership. Maybe McVeigh does not have high ownership, just because of the high nature of that one. So I think that's one to look at there.
Yeah, I think it's clearly Tracy Cortez as the leverage play of the week. She's at that untouchable price tag of $8,900 for a fighter that has not translated to DFS production at all. So yeah, give me Tracy Cortez as the leverage play of the week.
Best takedown upside. I mean, look, I always got to say, you got to look at Jacoby Smith just because of that wrestling background that he does have. Pantoja. You got to put Felipe Lima in there just because of what we saw in the last matchup.
Yep.
Maybe Brand Royval tries to take Van to the ground, not make it a striking matchup. I would throw Jack Hermansson in there. And Oliveira, you got to throw him in there as well.
Yeah, I mean, I have Jacoby Smith and Terrance McKinney as my two favorite fighters to land takedowns. Everybody else I don't have as crazy big takedowns landed. If I did look, I'm actually interested to see who goes for takedowns early in the Gregory Rodrigues fight or Jack Hermansson, because I think that they can both have success. I really do. I think that they both are talented and they both need a win. So this could be let me just take my opponent to takedown city or ride him or try to, just stall out a little bit. And I almost feel like I have a sneaky suspicion Gregory Rodrigues is going to look to do that to Jack Hermansson.
Ranked at 9K options, I would go Smith, Pantoja, Topuria, Denise.
I'm going Smith, Topuria, Pantoja, Denise.
Value plays underneath 8K and a core on DraftKings. We look at value plays underneath 8K. If I was going to kind of, I mean, you got to put Carl France in there. Talbott, I would put in there, but he's got to be able to stop the takedowns. I'd probably put Dariush up there as well.
Yeah, I mean, you're not wrong. I mean, Kaikar France is just, the price tag is ridiculous. If he does not get finished and it goes 25 minutes, I think that's such a cheap price tag. I think that somebody gets finished in the main event. You know, and then as far as under 8,000, I think you touched on it. Dariush, Hyder, Amil, the volume, the aggressiveness, and then Payton Talbott too. I mean, but we're touching on a lot of them. But honestly, like if you're doing a GPP, you need to have ownership attached to some of these guys, and you need to increase or decrease your exposure.
Yeah, I mean, and then the next one was about the core on DraftKings. I mean, I would love to do a core that starts with Topuria and Pantoja, and then maybe that third option is either Royval and Van.
Yeah, I think that I keep calling it the co-main event, but the Royval and Van fight is at such an easy price tag to help you get lineup construction together. Mm-hmm. So like, I'm going to have a lot of both of those fighters, as each and every week we do have those fighters in our lineups a ton. And yeah, I do like that start of your lineup. I agree with that.
We'll get over to Sam's questions here. Best top plays. For me, it starts. It starts Jacoby Smith and Ilia Topuria for me. Live dogs. I would put Oliveira in there if he can get the submission game going. I think you got to put Carl France in there. Hermansson, Talbott, those would be the ones that stick out to me.
Yeah, I would agree.
Top inside the distance fighters. I'll kind of look at some fights. I think the main event's got a high probability that that's going to end via finish. I would look at the other ones: McKinney, Borshev, Price, Smith. Maybe Dariush and Moicano.
Yeah, I don't know about that one. I feel like it, but I'm just that one's a difficult fight to call.
Yeah. Best decision odds fighters. Oh, you can just start Tracy Cortez and Viviane Araujo. I mean, that one's got 15-minute decision written all over it. I think Delgado and Amil, I think, goes the distance in terms of that one. I ultimately think Royval Van goes the distance. Maybe Pantoja and Carl France. Top punt plays. I think we've kind of gone over some of these. You just look at the main event, co-main event of what's going on between those two guys. Top leverage plays and AKs, we've kind of gone over that already with, talking about Tracy Cortez, maybe see where that ownership is on Felipe Lima. The Jason and Pete special, I really don't want to touch the first fight of the night just because of, how young those guys are and getting there. And then, of course, Pete's already kind of talked about, the Royval Van fight in terms of that one. Top captains, MVPs, I'm looking at Pantoja because of that takedown ability. Road to the Mansion Series, 8.5. I think that seems kind of high, Sam. Yeah, that's where I would kind of sit.
High.
Yeah, it's
freaking crazy high, my man.
Yeah, that's a big number that's being thrown out there. But as always, we do appreciate everyone who tunes in every week for the Fight HQ podcast. No episode next week because we have no UFC fight card. Kind of a rarity not have a UFC fight card on July 4th weekend, but that is not the case coming up next week. Of course, be sure to join Pete's Patreon. The link to that is in the description below. Hop in our Discord channel, totally free to join. Plus, we'll have a DraftKings contest coming up here later on the week. So that's going to do it for this edition of the Fight HQ podcast. We'll talk to you in 2 weeks.